As we know, week 0 in college football is in the books. And to kick off the 150th year of the NFL, we saw Miami and Florida play in Jacksonville. And it's crazy. It doesn't matter who I listened to, what interview I was listening to. The consensus was coaches and players from all over the world of college football were tuned in. So it's really amazing when you could get a game that you can get everybody to tune into. So we'll break down that game tonight because I think that game was very telling for both programs. And we seen something in that game that, I mean, it pretty much went the way I had expected. And we'll get into that here in a moment. But also Andrew Luck, the Colts Pro Bowl quarterback. Believe it or not, the guy's never been an All-Pro, though been considered one of the top quarterbacks in the league for many years. Is calling it a career for now. So we'll discuss that a little bit later in the show as well. Did he make the right move? Tiger Woods, not too long after capturing his 5th green jacket and title, has went under the knife and has had his 5th knee surgery. So what does this mean for his career, for him, moving forward? Plus, we'll get into other news and your calls, our guests, and so on and so forth. I know the last couple of weeks people have been asking a lot for the phone number to call in. 347-237-5539 is the number. Again, that's 347-237-5539. We don't give it out every week because not every week we take callers. We don't take callers every week. You know, it is a 3-hour show, but we usually have the whole 3 hours packed, bookend to bookend. So we will get into the weeds and a lot of these topics. One thing, you know, I've noticed quite a bit, just looking at the preseason predictions. I know a lot of people like to have the hot takes. They like to really, you know, make these bold predictions, and that's great for clicking and you know, what show I was listening. I was listening to some show, and they were talking about clicks. You know, getting clicks. And for any of those out there that doesn't understand why clicks are important, because there are several places or several ways of marketing a site, and the marketing on that site is based on how many times people view a page. So if you click on the page and their marketing shows up on the page, you get a percentage of the marketing dollars they charge that business for being on that page. It's a shared commission. Facebook and Google have said it was 50-50. I don't think it is, but that's a whole nother conversation in and of itself we won't get into. But I just thought it was crazy to hear somebody in the business that were writers and now do radio and television that don't understand the importance of clicks. But I got into it a little bit of a back and forth with Barrett Soleil. He because he put Nebraska as his most overhyped team of the year. And he said he just thinks they're going to fade. He thinks they're going to fade down the stretch. And I wholeheartedly disagree with him. But my big thing wasn't, pointing out he's wrong or that I think he's wrong. I just wanted Barrett to explain his logic a bit more. Because if the issue, again, his argument was Nebraska's the most overrated, most overhyped team to him because he thinks they're going to fade down the stretch and that's what's going to, they might come out fast, but fade down the stretch. But, and again, he highlights the fact that they only had 4 wins. But my question was, where do you gather your evidence of fading down the stretch? Nebraska started out 6-0. And in 5 of those games, they were within 5 points of winning. And most of those games came down to the other team scoring in the final minutes or seconds of the game to win. Having the ball last. On top of it. So easily could have been 9 wins. Right? They could have been 9-3? And 9-4. So that's a very different look at it. And then the comment of fading down the stretch. Well, everybody has complimented Nebraska, and everybody's lead into Nebraska was they closed out the year strong. They didn't fade. They got stronger and better as the year progressed, despite having injuries and missing some people with less depth and a year less in the system and basically just recruits from the previous staff and having a whole bunch of exodus. They went from their starter, then who would have been their next 2 guys in line left, and they were their backup was basically the 4-string quarterback who was a walk-on. They were at a phenomenal disadvantage last year, and even though they were at a phenomenal disadvantage last year, they still went out and played. Again, 5 of the 6 games that they lost, 5 of those losses were within 5 points, within less than a touchdown, without the extra point. If they scored the touchdown and not allowed the extra point, they would have won. They would have won. Okay? Just happened to not go in their favor. The ball bounced the other way. 6 different games. They had Ohio State, the team that's won back-to-back Big Ten championships on the ropes, and handed the game back to them. Kind of like Florida tried to do on Saturday with Miami. But Miami didn't keep it. Ohio State did last year. They beat Michigan State, a ranked Michigan State team. The best defense, best run defense in all of college football. In a windy game where they were basically limited to running. And nobody scored touchdowns. It was a kicking game. It was a kicking battle. It was a 9-6 final on 5 made field goals for 2 teams. very boring football for most people. But they won. So, I just am, again, it wasn't that I was trying to start stuff with Barrett Saleh. It's the fact that the logic he gave, just I felt like, and Barrett's not a guy that doesn't prepare and doesn't look into something, but it just seems like he didn't prepare and didn't look into it. So if you think they're going to be bad this year because you think that have trouble with depth and they're going to fade over the season. Last year they had less experience, more trouble with depth, and they got stronger over the end of the season. So what he's saying he thinks going to happen, I don't see any evidence for it. Maybe he's right. Maybe they will. I know they do have some issues at depth in places, but overall, Nebraska is actually one of the deepest defensive line depths in the Big Ten, as well as probably the most underrated at the corner position. So, I don't take issue with him having a different opinion. I just wanted some clarification on how he's basing it, what he was basing his opinion on. That's all. Nothing wrong with Barrett. So I know some people took it a different way. And no, I see some comments here. No, it's not about being a homer for Nebraska. It has nothing to do with that. I don't think they're going to win every game. I do think that they will beat Ohio State, and I do think that they're going to beat Iowa. And they're probably going to be a 2 or 3 loss team going in. Probably a 2-loss team going into the Big Ten championship game against either Ohio State or Michigan. I don't know what to expect of Michigan or which direction Michigan is going. They're supposed to be changing that offense up a bit. But from what I saw last year versus Michigan or Ohio State, despite having a more mobile quarterback now, is actually a better matchup for Nebraska. Being in that 30 defense, they're more of a matchup for a team that's going to spread the ball more, try to run it on the outsides. Because that's what they do. They try to funnel everything to the outside and keep it away from the middle of the field. So we'll have to see what kind of penetration and stuff they get this year. So, that being said, let me welcome in my co-host, Kevin Kress. He is the author. He's not more than one person, though. Sometimes it seems that he is. Of the P.K. Frazier novel series, which you can find on Amazon, as well as a bunch of other sites. But go to Amazon. You'll get a better price, and then you can you do what I did, and you can use your Prime to get it to you. You don't have to pay for the shipping, and that's great. Just buy all 3 books. He has a 4th one coming out here pretty soon, which I feel Tiger Woods might be in that new book somehow. How are you doing tonight, Kevin?
I'm doing well. But you are a Nebraska homer, so just own it, man.
I'm not How am I a Nebraska homer?
It's okay. It's okay. You are, aren't you?
No.
You went to Nebraska, did you? I mean, I'm a Virginia Tech homer. I mean, come on.
I'm not a Nebraska homer. I'm objective about the team. If we're talking about X's and O's in football and stuff, if Nebraska versus anybody on the field, I'm rooting for Nebraska. I don't even care who it is. If my son played for a team other than Nebraska, which it doesn't appear it would be at this time, I would root for my son, but I would root for Nebraska to win. That's I wouldn't.
It's okay. I mean, most of the well-respected sports journalists in the country, everybody from Mike Greenberg with his Northwestern and New York Jets alliance, and Mike Golick with Notre Dame, and you'd go down the list of people that the Rich Eisen with his Michigan obsession and an alumnus. So it's fine. It's fine. I don't think you lose objectivity. I think it just brings great stuff to the program. So and I didn't catch the beginning, but as I posted over the weekend in a couple of blogs, I did my predictions and I did my division champions blog. I picked Nebraska to win the Big Ten West. I have no problem with that pick. I think that their schedule's favorable. I think that they've been in the right direction. And for anybody to predict that they would fold down the stretch, I agree with you. I don't know who it was. I'm not, but anybody that says Nebraska is going to fold down the stretch wasn't watching last year. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know what team they were watching or what
Barrett Soleil
course they were reading or what they were doing. But
I mean,
that's just not a. I don't know what that's. Put it this way, I don't know what you're going to base that on.
Exactly,
based on what they did the last 7 games last year, right? I mean,
and that was my line of questioning with Barrett.
They were.
It wasn't put Barrett on blast. I mean, he's a very respectable guy in the college football. He's one of the top analysts, talking heads, whatever you want to call it. And that was just simply in my question. I was like, you're saying that Nebraska is the most overrated, most overhyped. I mean, how do you? The people, it just tells me the people that say that have not watched games, haven't paid attention to how it all shook down. Exactly. They just looked at Nebraska, had 4 wins, and how could you pick a 4-win team? Oh, just because Scott Frost is supposed to be magic? Like he's baby Jesus, and they're going to win, automatically winning a national championship this year? Oh, because the team he was with last time went 13-0? Listen, what he did in Central Florida really has no bearing on what is happening in Nebraska. So just let me clear that up. So people talk about, he did this. Well, he did that great. It's a completely different school.
We watched.
We
watched. No, and here's the thing. We haven't really started the season. I mean, obviously we had week 0.
Yes.
I called it opening weekend because it's not really week 1. They call it week 0. I call it opening weekend, right?
Yeah.
We had a couple of games. By the way, if you stayed up late, Saturday night, like I did, to watch Hawaii, Arizona, which I forget was a very entertaining game. I tell you, I came so close to picking Hawaii in that game, but I just couldn't bring myself to pull the trigger. I wish I had. I did pick that game correctly.
Didn't that feel like the Rams Titans Super Bowl?
And Khalil Tate, Khalil Tate comes within a yard.
Man,
of tying that football game. I mean, what a game! I mean, it was a great game. I mean, the coach for Hawaii pulls a Nick Saban, and pulls out his vaunted starter, the 6'6", Adonis guy, and brings in the kid who, by the way, was the backup for Tua Tagovailoa in high school in Hawaii. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It was such a great night. It was. I mean, the kid's name is Cordero. What a great night for college. What a great starting night for college football. I mean the Miami-Florida game went down to the wire. It wasn't a pretty game, and nobody predicted that would be a pretty game, right? That was going to be an ugly game. We knew that was going to be an ugly game.
Oh yeah.
Defensive oriented, all that, and it was an ugly football game, but it was fun to watch.
I would just want to highlight something really quick.
College football.
Khalil Tate had the night. Like, he was 22 for 39. He threw 39 passes in the game, which did not go to overtime. Right? So it did go to, he threw 39 passes. He 361 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 INTs. But on top of that, he also ran the ball 13 times for 108 yards, an average of 8.3 a carry. He didn't receive any passes, but I don't know. I guess that's the play Sumlin didn't put in for them to win, because I'm sure if there was a way for him to go in and kick field goals and return kicks, they would have done that. But evidently they lost those pages of the playbook, because he accounted for basically what's that? I lost my page. Almost all the stats. It's was that 169 yards in total offense and 3 touchdowns. Three of the 5 touchdowns.
He's this year's Kyler Murray. I mean, you got to watch this kid, right? And let me tell you why Arizona lost that game. I can tell you why they lost it. They abandoned the run. Hawaii has, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the 3rd or 4th worst run defenses in the country. Okay, it's pathetic, and you saw it. And Arizona, if they had just that game hinged on the interception that Tate threw. They were driving. They were down by 3. They were inside the red zone. They threw an interception, and Hawaii intercepted, went back down, scored a touchdown, and basically didn't quite ice the game, but came close. But if Arizona runs the football in that game, they probably win it 48-34, something like that. But they didn't. They tried to throw the ball, and Hawaii's pass defense is actually decent.
Yeah.
Because it has to be, because the run defense is so bad, right? But so, I mean, I think that was a coaching mistake by Kevin Sumlin, and we all know Kevin Sumlin's not the greatest coach on the planet. He's not. He hasn't really done a great job. I mean, he had some great weapons at Texas A&M and didn't actually do a whole lot with them. So, I think it was coaching error. I think it was a coaching error, because that is not to diminish the effort by those kids from Hawaii at all. They gave it all they had, and it worked. They won. It was a great opening night. It just absolutely was a great opening night of college football, and and I know a lot of people didn't see that game. Saturday night. But I tell you, and I certainly have a sympathy for the Pac-12, that people don't see their games. But I tell you, that's entertaining football. I mean, I know there was a high-scoring game, but that was fun to watch. And you had the Florida Miami game, which wasn't an entertaining game. It was just a really good football game. 24-20. I picked that game to be 24-13. Miami snuck an extra touchdown in on me. But and it still didn't hit the over-under. I think the over-under for that game was 44. I think it might have gone down to 42, but they didn't get there. No, I guess they got 44. I guess they hit it right on the button. It started out like 48, but it was close. But that's just a great start. It certainly whet our appetite for this weekend. I mean, and there's not a lot of great games this weekend, but there are some good ones. We have some nice matchup this weekend, and next weekend's when we get some juicy ones as well. LSU, Texas, and then things like that. But this week we've got some good games this week. Got UCLA traveling to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's one of those. We talked about this in the AAC. The AAC stacked. Cincinnati, Memphis, Houston, UCF, USF, who, by the way, USF takes on, I think they actually host Wisconsin. You should go to that game.
It's Friday, yeah.
You should get tickets.
I'm considering
It's Thursday night.
Friday night.
kids. Take all of them.
It's on Friday.
I think it's Thursday night. Take the kids. You sure?
Pretty sure. I think it's the 30th. I'll check.
You are correct. I had the wrong day on my
Okay.
list. Yes, it is the
It's
it
okay.
is the last day, the last game on Friday. Yeah, take the kids, let them run loose in the stadium. They'll have a good time. Your wife won't mind. Just tell her you got it covered. Let them
Got this.
around, go to the pirate ship and all that kind of stuff while you're sitting in a box.
They
or
actually
something,
won't let you get on the pirate. You have to buy special tickets for the pirate ship, and they usually only have that
come on.
open.
You know people.
Yeah.
You know people though. You're a guy in Tampa. You let your kids in there. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
But no, just all kidding aside.
I'm a guy that gets arrested on the
football
big screen, letting his kids run rampant on the pirate ship. That's it. That's the guy. I'll be the guy. Yeah.
Exactly. I can't wait to see it on national television. I'll be like, "What's that guy thinking?" I'll be like, "That's my man. There he is, right there." So all kidding aside, that should be a very competitive football game. Wisconsin's going to go down playing that heat and humidity. I have not made my picks yet for this week. I'm going to do that the next couple of days. But I have my eye on that one because I don't think Wisconsin's as good as they say, and this is a trap game for them. This could be interesting down there in Tampa. Those teams have something to prove, and the gap isn't as far as it used to be between the AAC and the Power Five. I mean, we've talked about this. We both believe, I think, that the AAC is really close. I'll tell you this: if you put UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and South Florida in the ACC Coastal this year, one of them could probably win it.
That'd be interesting.
One of them could probably win that division.
Yeah, the coastal.
Don't you think?
Yeah, it's the coastal.
Yeah,
It's where Clemson isn't.
Yeah, I'm talking about the weakest. Yeah, the
But
weakest division in Power Five.
You know,
is the AC Coastal.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair to say. But also,
okay.
Outside, I mean, you could say that before Georgia's reemergence the last few years since Kirby Smart, you could probably say that about the SEC East, has been pretty fluff.
You could have 3 years ago, right? And that was before. That's before Dan Mullen got back to Florida, and that was before Kirby Smart took over at Georgia. They had a season or two, and it was pretty bad. Spurrier was kind of mucking it up at South Carolina. They had Tennessee was down. Missouri wasn't playing very well. Yeah, that was a bad stretch. But right now, the SEC East is fairly stout. I believe anyway with Georgia, Florida, Missouri, and Missouri's got a piece of cake schedule. They're going to contend in the East just because of their schedule. I don't think they're going to win it, but and Florida didn't look great the other night. I think their quarterback is still suspect. Now he can run the football, and he probably needs to do more of that. But that defense is good. They had some lapses against Miami because Miami doesn't have a great offense either. And so those two teams kind of somehow scored 44 points. Of course, one of them I think was a pick six, but you're going to get that. But that you're right. That division has come up, but the ACC Coastal is just, and actually the Atlantic's not that great either this year. I mean, you got Clemson, but outside of Clemson, who do you have? I mean, Florida State's down. I mean, Louisville's down. NC State's okay. Then you get what? Wake Forest, Boston College, Syracuse. That's who you're putting up there in the Atlantic. Yeah, the ACC is the worst conference in Power Five, and I'm not even sure the ACC is as strong as the AAC. I mean, if you take Clemson out of the picture, there's not a lot going on there in the ACC this year, and that's why I picked Virginia Tech to win the Atlantic. The Coastal, because their schedule's it's a piece of cake.
Well,
I mean,
I don't know. I see him.
Boston College game 1.
So
they play Wake Forest.
I want to see what Boston College does because they're such an up and down program. And when we did the previews of them, I mean, we got to remember Boston College was ranked at one point last year. So is it something that they can sustain and keep kind of that momentum going, or was it just because they were in a weak conference? And again, the conference didn't get any. It didn't really get any tougher. But seeing on Saturday, Miami clearly played better than I think a lot of people expected Miami to play. So for a lot of people, it was very hopeful for them to see that. But at the same time, Miami. It was a weird game because it seemed that they did everything they needed to do to win except for win. I mean, they got on that last drive with 8 minutes to go in the game, they got 5 pass interference calls and got first and 10 inside the 30 5 times, and they couldn't close it out. They just couldn't make it happen. And I couldn't help noticing that I don't know if they weren't switching up the cadences with Miami throughout the game, but specifically in the second half, Florida just seemed to know what the snap count and cadence was, and they were just in the backfield, and they were reacting quicker than the offensive linemen were, and it was terrible. And that's the thing is you got to when you have a true freshman or a redshirt, when you got freshman quarterback in there, you can't go on a false cadence. You usually can't go with somebody and say, all right, you need to do you're going to do a longer cadence, but you're going to try to draw them off. You're going to bark a little and try to draw them off and switch your cadence up. It's tougher to do because they're so green. They're so, they're not used to it. So, both teams really struggled on offense, I think, from that aspect. Offensive line play wasn't very good, but both defenses looked pretty good. So, it was just an anomaly of a game, This is what happens in the first week of the season when you play quality opponents.
Well, the defense is usually ahead of the offense, especially in college because there's no preseason. So, and the other thing too is you never know about these games in college until the season gets farther down the road. Because take last year. Virginia Tech beat Florida State in their opener, right? At Florida State, they beat them. And Tech gets ranked 13th, right? It's like, oh, my gosh, they're really good. They beat Florida State. Well, that was great, but Florida State wasn't any good, right? And Virginia Tech wasn't any good. And so you didn't know until, 6 weeks later that wasn't as big a game as it appeared to be. So we'll see what happens with Miami and Florida. I think they're both good teams, though. I think they'll be. I mean, listen, I'm still not sold on Miami. Only because first year head coach, they kind of overachieved Saturday night. They got lucky. Florida made some stupid mistakes and let them back in the game. Instead of interception, it was just dumb. Right late in the game, it's like, why are you throwing the ball? Right? Why are you even doing that? So, it's kind of, it was, there was some inexplicable things that happened, and Florida won in spite of themselves to a large extent. But we'll see how Miami is. I'm just not sold on them. Their quarterback situation's shaky. Their whole, they got some, listen, they won the turnover battle the other night and still didn't win the ball game. So I don't know. I will say I'm not objective when it comes to Miami. They've been a rival to Virginia Tech for a long time.
Yeah.
But they haven't won. They have not won.
Yeah.
A division or league title in 17 years.
I saw something the other day.
18 years.
What was that? What was it? It was Vanderbilt. Oh, yeah.
Right?
So the Vanderbilt Commodores, right? SEC team, right?
Right.
They've won, and this is stat of the day. If we had that music, you don't want to sing, Kevin? Okay. Anyways, I was waiting for you to buy.
That's one version.
I know.
Stat
of the day. Stat of the day.
Stat of the day. Stat of the day. Stat of the day. Okay, there you go.
So the Vanderbilt Commodores have won as many ACC titles as Miami.
Which is 0.
Yes. Yes.
Well, let me tell you this. Wake Forest has won more ACC division titles than Miami.
Yep. And Michael Irving
Wake
seems
Forest
to be
won the
so ashamed of that. He wears a jersey from the Big East. A Miami Big East jersey.
Right. Which, by the way, the Virginia Tech won as many Big East titles as Miami did. Okay? And has won a couple ACC titles since Miami's been in the league. So it's like, guys, get off. I don't understand this whole. I mean, it's been. Let's see, Miami won the national championship, I believe, in 2001.
Yes.
1 or 2, I can't remember.
No, it's 1.
Exactly. Okay.
Because I know who they
and they won the Big
beat.
East that year. That's it.
Yeah.
They won anything. Nothing since then. So I kind of want to back up the truck here. Okay, a 4-point loss to Florida is a big deal. No, they lost. And they got beaten. I mean, that they really Florida was the better team Saturday night. If you watch the game.
Yeah.
I mean, people have to watch. You have to watch the games, right? You got to watch the games.
They were a better team, but they weren't the number 8 team or 12 team. They didn't look like a top. They didn't look like a top 15 team for sure.
Well, but Miami, to their credit, it's gonna make you look ugly because they're gonna try to win it with defense, right? At least now, because their offense is just they just don't have the weapon. And so they'll do that to you. And Florida's not a juggernaut on offense either. I mean, Dan Mullen will get a good offensive team in Florida, right? But it's only his second year. He's relying on defense as well. So that in fact, I had people predicting. Somebody said the first one to 17 would win that game, but you weren't counting on some turnovers and some defensive scoring. So I predicted 24-13. It was 24-20. Yeah, that's about in the range that most people were, saying. I didn't hear anybody think somebody was going to get to 30 points. And then it didn't happen. And so we'll have to see. I mean, you just don't know until they get into the seasons. And now we won't know because the AC and SC neither one of those teams is going to play a league game or a meaningful game for another 3 weeks or so.
Yeah.
So, we'll see them beat up on, we'll see them both beat up on some, and good for them playing each other the first week. I think it's great. We talked about scheduling and how we're both very disappointed with the weak scheduling in the Power 5 conferences, particularly the ACC and the SEC, particularly. Although, the other conferences have their share of teams that are, the Washington States of the world who don't play anybody, those kinds of things. But, Miami won't be challenged again until, well, actually, I take that back. I look at it. Miami has to play North Carolina next week at North Carolina. They open their conference schedule after a bye week. They don't play this week.
So that'll be an interesting. I think it's going to be a bit more interesting than people are going to give it credit for.
That'll be an interesting game. You got Mac Brown back at North Carolina, Miami coming off the loss to Florida, and then the next meaningful game that Miami plays will be October October 5th against Virginia Tech. So, they're starting out with pretty meaningful games right off the. That game October 5th, in my estimation, will most likely decide the ACC Coastal. I think they're the two best teams, and that game, the winner of that game, has a big advantage in the Coastal. Now, the Coastal's kind of wide open. You've got Pittsburgh that has something to say about it. You got Virginia that might be able to have a say in it, but I think that's going to be a big game. So Miami's got to work it out for them early, but then they played Bethune-Cookman in Central Michigan in the interim, but after North Carolina. So let's not get their schedule's kind of lame, and they don't play Notre Dame, they don't play Clemson, So the reason I say that Miami and Virginia Tech are the top two is because both of their schedules are pretty favorable in the non-division side of things. I mean, Virginia Tech plays Boston College and Wake Forest, who are two of the bottom three feeders in the Atlantic. So, if Virginia Tech with 8 starters on defense coming back and a starting quarterback returning can't contend, then Justin Fuentes is the wrong guy for the job, because this is the season. I mean, Bud Foster, their defense coordinator, is retiring after this year. It's his last hurrah. That's a big game in Miami on October 5th. So, but that being said, we won't know, right? We should never know for weeks. How, and that's why I think that that's why I think it's really nice that the College Football Playoff Committee does not put out their first rankings till November, because you got these things sorted out.
Yeah, and it's I was listening. It was a coach's interview I was listening to. It might have been Dana Holgerson, which is and again, people are talking about this Week 1 games. I think their game against Oklahoma is probably one of the more interesting ones that I want to watch this weekend. But
absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
The thing is, he was saying they're like 3 weeks because, it was who was it? It was talking about they look at things in phases, and they're through phase. They do phase 1, phase 2. Who the hell? Coach Day. That's what it was. It was Coach Day up in Ohio State. So, they go in phase 3 is the first 3 weeks of the season, the first 3 games. And then they assess. So, and that's something that's pretty common among all coaches. They kind of look at the season and where they're at in phases. And that's just telling. I mean, how unappreciative, in a sense, we should be of the postseason rankings, because even the coaches on their own team need several weeks to understand where their team is at and where it needs to go for the season. So to think that before the season we can understand what this team is ridiculous. So I don't know.
But it was but just to put a cap on Saturday. I mean, it was a great Saturday for college football.
Oh, it was.
I mean, and actually even the very first game. The first game was Villanova at Colgate. I know it's
I did not
FCS
watch the game.
Colgate was the final 8 team last year, maybe final 14 last year. I remember in the FCS. Villanova disappointing. Villanova went in there and spanked them. So it's like, wow, the first game of the season was a rather big upset in FCS. It was fun to watch. Of course, I was only watching because it was the first game of the season and it was FCS, but it was fun to watch. So It was a good day on Saturday. It was good. I'm looking forward to this weekend immensely, obviously, as we all are. My wife is not. She's now basically a football widow for the next 3 months, but she's getting used to that, so that's all right. It's not uncommon. It's not a new thing. So, but it should be. There's a few games this weekend. This isn't a heavy weekend in terms of the kind of games that we like to see, but that comes more next weekend. But there are a few very interesting games that we can. Obviously, we already mentioned one of them. We mentioned UCLA Cincinnati, because we mentioned Cincinnati briefly. That's going to be now UCLA is not one of the top tier teams in the Pac-12, but Cincinnati also plays Ohio State. I think the next week. So you've got that'll tell us something about the chances that Cincinnati has against Ohio State. Because I am not sold on Ohio State, and I think that number 5 ranking is totally undeserved. They've got a new quarterback, new coach. True, Urban Meyer left the place with a lot of talent, but I don't know. But yeah, next week is so Cincinnati starts off with UCLA and Ohio State. That's a big boy schedule right there, Matthew. Very few Power 5 teams have that.
Yes,
so I give them credit for doing that. Obviously, and they're hosting UCLA. They go into the Horseshoe, Ohio State, but Ohio State better be ready for that game. I mean, Cincinnati beat Virginia Tech in the bowl game last year. I mean, I'm true Tech wasn't, hitting on all cylinders. They had a lot of controversy at Tech. They had a lot of players leave. There was a lot of unrest in that program at the end of last year. But still, Cincinnati's a formidable team, and Ohio State better be ready to play. And I'm going to predict. I think Cincinnati's probably going to beat UCLA. I just don't think Chip Kelly's has that program all together yet. And West Coast teams don't usually travel east very well.
And that's the thing is.
So we right. We'll have to see, and that. Fortunately for UCLA, that's a 7:00 Eastern time start Thursday night. Fortunately for UCLA.
So, and that's the thing is,
if they put that game early,
it's gonna be tough for some teams like that. We want to see people that we've known to do well. Like people want Kevin Sumlin to show up. That's why they hired him. They want those schools to be relevant. UCLA. Again, that's why they hired Chip Kelly. But I think, unfortunately, we might not see them turn the corner for a few years. Like, for example, Georgia Tech. It's going to be one of those schools like Georgia Tech. They go to Clemson. That's an 8 p.m. game. It's only on the ACC network. I think a bunch of people in the ACC they're going to get really fed up with this because they're airing a lot of games this year and a lot of commentary and stuff this year solely on the ACC network, and I don't think ESPN's launch of this network is in the best vein. Truly, I think they're trying too much to hold people at ransom for games, but Georgia Tech is going to be a different team this year. It's not going to be the triple option threat necessarily that they've looked at for the last decade or so. It's switched up quite a bit, so they're not going to see the same team that they would expect to see. In the same tune that. Utah's going to BYU. BYU has been one of those programs that have been up and down, have found their own as an independent school. But, Utah can't overlook this BYU team. I mean, they have some very formidable points to their team, and we didn't get to preview them last week. We didn't get into BYU previewing them, but I mean, this is a school that has averaged, 20 to almost 30 points a game for the last few years, so they can put points on the board, and they've had quality quarterbacks and players that we've seen go on to the next level. So they can't shrug away at BYU. BYU will show up to play football, even if it.
Oh, and by the way, I mean, the people in the South too. I mean, that BYU Utah rivalry.
Yeah.
That's nasty.
Yeah.
That's a nasty rivalry. That is one of. I mean, we can start spewing out rivalry games. Ohio State, Michigan, and Clemson, South Carolina, and USC, UCLA, and Alabama, Auburn, Florida State, Florida, Georgia. You start spouting out some of those rivalries. BYU, Utah is right up there. Now, I mean, and people forget too. BYU won a national championship and was very prominent nationally for many, many years.
Yeah.
And Utah is my pick to win the Pac-12. So, that's you're right. We didn't get into the independents last week. We didn't get to touch on BYU and Notre Dame in particular. Those two, I think, they're the main independents. I think Army's independent as well. But yeah, that's a big game. That is always a big game. And this year, I think it takes on national prominence because BYU has a schedule that would allow them, if they actually can navigate it, could get them, nationally ranked.
Absolutely. They similar to what we've seen do.
They open up. Listen.
I was going to go over the schedule. Utah, then they go to Tennessee. They have
Tennessee.
So
USC
at home, Washington at home. They go to Toledo
at home. Mac attack.
Then they go to Tampa. So USF is bringing some quality teams into that stadium in Tampa this year. So people in Tampa, I hope you have your Bulls tickets because they're bringing some teams in there that are really worth outside the Bulls seeing. Then they have Boise State at home. Utah State on the road, which again, love the quarterback there. He's one of my keep an eye on as quarterback prospects for the NFL and the Heisman this year. Liberty at home was at Idaho State, and then they finished the season on the road to UMass, and the San Diego State that's gonna be a good game. San Diego State has been really, really good over the last couple years, and that program has seen its resurrection. Again, they have Brady Hoke is their coach there. I mean,
former Michigan coach.
Yeah.
So BYU could win the Pac-12. I mean, they've got Utah, USC, and Washington. But interesting about that, all those games are at home.
Yeah.
At altitude in Provo, Utah. So, and they open against 4 Power 5 conference teams. So,
and no Power 5 schools. I don't think any Power 5 schools open against Power 5 conference teams.
No, nobody plays.
Not 4, at least.
BYU and Notre Dame are the only. BYU and Notre Dame are the only 2 teams that play. But they don't have a conference. But Notre Dame has to play 5 ACC schools by contract because they're a 2/3 ACC school. Okay. Notre Dame's ACC in every other sport except football. But no, it's a very front-loaded schedule for BYU. Five of the first 6 games. I mean, you throw out 6 actually of the first 7 because they have Boise State in there. Boise's a dark horse. Boise has a couple of games that they can make some noise. In fact, Boise State is playing, I believe, this weekend at Florida State, so they can make some noise. So there's some really good games this weekend, and BYU Utah now BYU is not ranked preseason. I think they're hovering in the 30s in terms of the power rankings. Actually, they're down at 50s. They're in the 50s. They're not supposed to be that good, and we'll see what their schedule looks like. But hosting, they're probably going to steal one of those games from the Pac-12. I'm not sure which one at this point that I would predict, but chances are they'll steal one of those games. Very likely, I would suspect, most likely against USC. But they've got a shot at one of those games. They're probably as good as Tennessee, so they might be able to go to Knoxville and pick that game off. Although my daughter goes to Tennessee, I will be at the Tennessee South Carolina game later this season, and so I'm not wanting to pick too much against the Volunteers. But if BYU comes out of that stretch 2-2, that'd be a heck of a start to their season, don't you think?
I think you should wear I Heart Lane Kiffin shirt to that game.
Well, I do heart Lane Kiffin.
I'm just saying. I know. I'm just saying you should wear the Vols orange with an I Heart Lane Kiffin.
As he heads into the Horseshoe this weekend to play at the Ohio State University, which, by the way, I guess since we just said that we have to pay somebody royalties, do you have like a nickel on you that you can throw?
Technically, it's pending.
Trademark.
It is pending.
The Ohio State.
We can say the Ohio State. It's still pending.
Okay.
But and that's the funny thing. So people were talking about, isn't the spelled THEE? Yes, but grammatically, just like the word or a and an, if it's a vowel, it's the. If it's a consonant, it's the. Grammatically. Nobody really cares or uses it, but that's technically the rule. But, technically you're supposed to make a full stop at a stop sign when no one else is around, but most people don't. So, the Ohio State. It's a funny thing because I was listening. I think wasn't it the Dan Patrick show earlier? I guess last week they were talking about it and how there's a bunch of different stories on how it was because Ohio University, the Fighting Soldiers, they were the first school in Ohio, so they were trying to trademark Ohio, and then they, as Ohio, the university in Ohio, so they couldn't use Ohio as the first word in a university. So Ohio State came back with the Ohio State University, meaning that they are the school in Ohio. So it was kind of like a back and forth. You'd wonder why those two teams, clearly one of the top schools in the MAC right now, don't have like a rivalry game. It's, you'd think they would. I'm sure they used to. It seems that they used to. I haven't done any research on that, clearly. But, why not? It gives the MAC quality game each year, and Ohio State gets a MAC school. You can't really complain about. It used to be Iowa used to complain about having Iowa State before Ohio State's kind of reinsurgence here. But now it's, the argument isn't against Iowa State being on the schedule for Iowa anymore. Iowa State's actually won a couple of those games in the last decade. So, who knows?
So let's run down some games from this weekend that are coming up that we can just hit on. Okay, so we're going to talk about UCLA Cincinnati. Big game for Cincinnati. They get Ohio State next week, hosting a Power 5 team. A big statement game, I think, for the Atlantic Athletic Conference. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a statement game. You're playing a named program. Chip Kelly brings UCLA, and UCLA's down. Cincinnati, a bowl team from a year ago. Yeah, I think this is a very interesting football game. I'm not going to make a pick right now, but I'm leaning towards Cincinnati. I haven't done all my analytics on this to see how the matchup really goes, but I think it's a great game for college football. I think it's great for the. Listen, I would love to see the American become the sixth power conference, and then we can expand the playoffs to 8 teams and do what we should do, which is to be more inclusive in this stuff, because none of the other group of 5 has exhibited the depth that the American has in terms of really getting their programs. You got the Mountain West, which has Boise State, and there's nobody, you can't name a quality team in that league. And Conference USA and the Sun Belt, forget about, and the MAC hasn't been competitive at national level in quite a while.
Fresno State has actually been
them now and then, but they haven't had. They've had a couple of decent. Northern Illinois was good a few years ago, but I'm talking about depth of conference.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say that, I mean, do they have 3 or 4 quality teams that you can point to and go, wow, they can compete? And so you've got 2 of those games this weekend, right? You have UCLA traveling to Cincinnati. You have Houston going to Oklahoma. So you have two American teams going to. I mean, you can't get more well-known brands in that powder blue and gold from UCLA and the red and the red and white from Oklahoma. I mean, so the Americans taking on all comers, and so I think it'll be interesting to see. Those 2 games are significant. Houston they went out and got Dana Holgorsen. I mean, that guy's a quality football coach. I mean, they went out and got him from West Virginia. They mean business, and they've been good. I mean, they had Kevin Sumlin, and then who did pretty well there with Texas A&M. They have, then they were able to. Then they had the guy that stayed for just a couple of years, right? Had a cup of coffee there, and now he's at Texas, and so you've got Tom Herman, and now they've got Holgorsen. So Houston's been a player for a while. Weren't they on the cusp of a New Year's Day bowl game a few years ago, and they stubbed their toe against Navy in the last game or something like that? It was crazy.
Yep, absolutely.
But they've had some success. So Oklahoma needs to strap it on. I mean, I like Oklahoma to win the Big 12, but they can win the Big 12 without beating Houston, because Houston's not in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And so, I don't have Oklahoma getting to the playoffs, because I think they're going to lose a couple times, even if they win the Big 12. So you got that. So those 2 games are significant games. In terms of shaping the landscape of the American making a case to have their champion. Let's say UCF runs the table. Let's just say that Cincinnati beats UCLA, gives Ohio State a tough game. Houston upsets Oklahoma. UCF runs the table, and you go, wow, the American's pretty good, because these other teams that UCF beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beat good teams. So these are important games. I don't think Cincinnati and Houston are going to compete for a national championship, but they can certainly set the stage for, the case to be made for a UCF to say, well, if we run the table this year, we should get a seat at the table.
And it's
Thoughts on that?
it's a value argument. I mean, right now Vegas has Cincy at 7.5 on the over/under. I mean, with Luke Fickell as head coach, I like Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell, remember, he was an interim head coach at The Ohio State University. He's a quality head coach. Again, they went 11-2 last year. They returned 14 starters, 7 on each side of the ball. They're actually also one of the most experienced teams in the American Conference. I'm willing to make a pick right now that Cincinnati beats UCLA, even though right now they ESPN has them has UCLA as a 57.6% chance of winning. I will predict this week that Cincinnati wins that game at home against UCLA. Close. Probably terrible on defense for both teams.
But UCLA only won 3 games last year.
Yeah, I get it. It's not.
I would say that Cincinnati's probably the better team. They're just the better team.
And I don't think that's I don't think that's shaming UCLA either.
We're talking about betting. We can talk about betting now because betting's legal. It's been deemed legal by the. I never, but you can. And I have. You can make money betting on college football because they can't cover all the games.
Yeah.
Pro football is almost impossible to make money betting on, right? Because there's only 16 games and they spend so much time and effort every game. But when you have 100 games a weekend in college football, stuff falls through the cracks. And so, the betting, by the way, the initial line is set by the casinos, but it's adjusted based on the money that comes in.
Yeah.
Well, Las Vegas is 50 miles from California, where there's a bunch of UCLA people. They're going to bet on UCLA. And so the money goes to UCLA, so they have to adjust the line to make sure they even the bet. Well, nobody's betting on Cincinnati. I mean, that game, the handle on that game is probably not going to be all that big, except in Vegas with UCLA people.
Well,
so
if I was
you look at it and go,
a gambling person, that'd be my lock. That'd be my lock pick.
Cincinnati doesn't win a game. Yeah, but even if Cincinnati doesn't win the game, okay, they're probably not going to lose by more than 7. So that's a really safe bet.
And here's the thing:
I agree with you.
But let me sway it back the other way a little bit. Yes, UCLA rather only had 3 wins last year, but they came within a touchdown of beating 10th ranked Washington in Washington, within a touchdown of beating Arizona State at Arizona State, and within a touchdown in the last game of the year of beating Stanford at Stanford or at home. So, Washington.
Right,
Washington. So some good teams. They played close. Again.
Yeah, they could have been 6. They could have been. They were the heartbeat of being 6-6 and playing a football game. Now, they lost to Cincinnati
last year
in the Rose Bowl last year.
Yeah,
to start the season,
and that was within 7 too. No, it wasn't. That was within 9. That was a 9-point difference.
9 points, but
still.
But who's to say that that could be different this year with teams that are pretty much the same teams playing each other? Why would you think that? Why would somebody think there's a 16-point swing from 9 down last year to 6 to 7 up this year?
Yeah, I don't get that.
What logic is there for there? Right? And by the way, UCLA isn't picked to be. I mean, the publication I use has them ranked at 59. Well,
yeah.
It's not like they had a 5-star recruiting class and all of a sudden jump up to some. I mean, it's going to take Chip Kelly because that cupboard was there. Jim Moore left that cupboard bare at UCLA. His recruiting was atrocious.
Yeah, they had
And so
the
Chip Kelly's gonna take him-
44th rank recruiting
It's gonna-
class. Just for the
Yeah,
record.
it's going to take him a while to get that ship righted. So, we talked about two games: Houston, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's going to be the favorite, but Houston's going to give them a game. If that game was at Houston, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I might actually give the nod to Houston, but going to Oklahoma, not an easy place to play. Oklahoma's good. Sure, they lost Kyler Murray, but they've had how many Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks at Oklahoma in the last 20 years? A lot.
Yeah.
and they're mostly still in the NFL. I mean, you go back all the way back to a bunch of guys. Sam Bradford, by the way, is still in the NFL. Believe it or not.
Chad Henne is still in the NFL.
Baker who is?
Chad Henne.
Yeah, Chad Henne's still in the NFL. Yeah. You'd be amazed. If you go back and look at the backup quarterbacks in the NFL, you'd be amazed to who some of those names are. You're like, what?
Yeah, I was looking at
it's
injury
pretty
reports, and it said Chad Henne. And I'm like, Chad, is this old? I was like, that dude's still in the league?
Yeah.
He's my age.
It's pretty amazing. So let's pick a couple more games. We already talked about Florida Atlantic going to Ohio State to get the crap kicked out of them, right? Because last year they went to Oklahoma and lost like 63-17 or something like that.
Okay,
but
let me.
They'll get a huge payday.
They will.
Huge payday.
And honestly, I think this is a quality game for Ohio State to start their season out with. I don't think Florida Atlantic is as terrible as some people want to make it. I mean, they were ranked 55th in recruiting this year. They had a total 33 recruits that they brought in. Most of them 3 stars, obviously, but they were ahead of UCF, Arizona, not too far behind UCLA, ahead of TCU, Michigan State, Missouri, Miami, Arizona State, Ohio State, or Oklahoma State rather, Iowa, Minnesota. I mean, I'm listing off some Cincinnati. I'm listing off some names of teams that usually you'd think would recruit better than the Owls at Florida Atlantic. But he's recruited. They recruited better than UCF, a team that's nationally ranked. They were just behind Syracuse, barely. So we're talking probably the second or third best team in the ACC.
That's the Lane Kiffin factor, though, right? Because Lane Kiffin has a recent name, right? I mean, he's well known recently.
I would like it, and obviously as a sports observer from the entertainment side, I would like it to be competitive.
Oh yeah,
and it's going to be. It's not hard for me to overanalyze the shit out of this one and thinking, maybe Florida Atlantic would maybe give them a run for their money on this. I don't know, but
I'm going to watch again. I think it's the first game on. I think it's the first game on Saturday.
Yeah, it's
I think it's like early on Saturday.
It's a noon game. So this Saturday is crazy for me because at noon, Ohio State, Florida Atlantic play, which I want to see. Nebraska, South Alabama play, which I also want to see. And then my kids have a birthday party at 1:30. I don't know why my wife decided, hey, the twins should have a birthday party at 1:30 on the opening week of football season. I asked. She didn't have an answer. But anyways, so it's going to be a busy Saturday. And
I will not be watching football early because I'll just record everything. But I will be at a pregame reception for the Arkansas Portland State game. Then I'll be in the club section, drinking cold beverages, watching Arkansas. Hopefully, avoid embarrassment against an FCS school. But
who they play North Texas or Texas
Saturday.
State? Who's it? North Texas?
What's that now?
Portland State. They play Portland State, right? Portland State.
Portland State.
Yes.
Yes. The
Vikings.
Their claim to fame was Neil Lomax.
Who?
Was from Portland State. Neil Lomax, the starting quarterback for the Cardinals back in the day, was from Portland State.
Oh, okay.
So they have produced a couple of NFL quarterbacks. But see, that's how boring I am, Matthew. That I remember things like Neil Lomax went to Portland State.
Well, they only had 4 wins last
Google
year.
them.
And one of them was to the College of Idaho, which I'm pretty sure is a community college. Like, you can't even click on it. You can't. ESPN has no information on this school. They're like, yeah, you're gonna have to Google it. The College of Idaho.
Arkansas is actually. I think they're looking to be seated in the top 10 in the FCS rankings this year, along with Virginia Tech. I think they can't win the national title in the FBS, so they're going to try to get relegated to the FCS and then try to, get a playoff position in that division, because that's about all they. My wife asked me last week. She goes, "Can we watch something? I want to watch something funny on television. I want to watch a comedy." I said, "How about we set up the reruns for last year's Arkansas Razorback football season when they only won 2 games?" I said, "That'll make you laugh." So anyway.
So hold on a second. So I just want to touch on this real quick, because the College of Idaho is an NAIA school. It's NAIA. It's not even NCAA. It's NAIA.
Well, I mean, if the FCS schools are gonna, if the FBS schools play
FCS schools,
right?
Yeah.
FCS schools as their, then the FCS schools have to play Division II or NAIA schools as their, whipping boys. So that's what happens. So, and Portland State is if I remember correctly, Portland State was NAIA. I mean, they weren't even an FCS school until, I don't know, last 10, 15 years.
Well, they've been on a surge.
They're new to Division One. They're new to Division One at that level anyway. So just I'd throw that out there. So we already talked about Utah and BYU, which is going to be a dogfight.
Yeah.
But there's 2 games. Well, we have time left. There are 2 really good games that are meaningful nationally. One is Oregon-Auburn at Jerry's World in Arlington, Texas. I happen to believe Oregon's overrated. Auburn's probably about where they should be, 15, 16, something like that. But that's an interesting ballgame, and that is actually a true neutral site game. Auburn's in Alabama. Oregon is obviously in the state of Oregon.
Oh, what? Wait.
So that's actually,
breaking news.
Yeah,
breaking news.
Yeah. It's still a neutral site.
Yes.
There are some neutral site games that aren't really neutral. Like when Alabama plays Duke in Atlanta, that's not neutral, because you can walk to Atlanta from Alabama. Okay, so it's really not.
Well, the states touch, of course.
It's like and Duke has like 12 people show up for football. So it's if they get the whole basketball team to show up for the football game, it would be a big deal.
I think there's more
And so,
Alabama
so
fans
cities
in
and stadiums-
Atlanta than actually Georgia Tech fans, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, but so Duke, Alabama. Anyway, so you've got Oregon, Auburn, a true neutral site game with two national contenders. I mean,
Yeah.
Auburn is good. If they beat Alabama, heck, I mean, you're looking at a team that's supposed to contend for the SEC West title. Oregon is the favorite in the North, although I think Washington's going to win that. But Oregon's the favorite. That's the biggest game of the weekend in terms of national, combined national rankings. That's a big game. I like Auburn. I don't think Oregon's as good as, and so those two teams are going to get to gauge themselves pretty quickly of how good they are.
All right.
Oregon's good. I'm not saying they're not good. I'm not saying
Well,
they're not a.
it kind of sounds like you're saying they're not good.
They probably are.
It kind of sounds like that. I don't know. Here's the thing. The issue I have is every time someone from the SEC plays a team from the Pac-12 or really any other conference that's not Clemson, there's always this assumption that the SEC team is just really going to overpower them. It was the same suspicion when the first college football playoff when Florida State and their defense from Florida, Alabama, Georgia was going up against this Oregon Ducks team. And they say, they're just going to manhandle them in the trenches. Even then, that wasn't the case. I like this defense for Auburn, and I think same way as Florida, the same way that we saw with Miami. Again, this team is going to be, this Auburn team is going to be based on what they do is going to be based on their defense. However, Oregon may have the best offensive line, talent-wise, size, strength-wise, in the country. They're very experienced up front there. I don't look for them to get manhandled at all. However, I do look for them to the Auburn defense to get neutralized a bit up front because Oregon's runs more of that spread concept, the more of the fast-paced concept. Gus Malzahn likes that, the coach for Auburn, and he's taking back the play-calling duties with the true freshman Bo Nix. Now, the crazy thing about Bo Nix is the last time he was seen on national television in an Auburn jersey was when Auburn won the national championship. Cam Newton had jumped into the stands to take a picture, and there was a picture of this little blonde-haired kid wearing a number 2 jersey, like looking at Cam Newton. And that blonde-haired little kid is the guy that has been named the starter for Auburn. So he was rated one of the top pure passers in the college scouting and recruiting. But he's more of a dual threat type of quarterback because he is athletic. He can move. So I'll look for Gus Malzahn to use him like that, but this is his first game. He's young. He's very green. This is his first game. They're going to have to lean so heavily on that defense. We just don't know what the Tigers are going to get out of the offense behind Joe Nix. So I'm not saying that Auburn definitely loses, but I think that there's too much weight being placed on the assumption of an SEC team playing against the Pac-12 team that I think it's blurring the actual facts behind this. And I think in Oregon, they play a very good attacking style of defense. I look for Oregon to really stand out a bit more. I don't think this is a slam dunk for Auburn. And if Auburn goes into this game and the fans go into this game thinking it's a slam dunk, kind of like the Gator fans did this weekend, they're going to have a rude awakening. I think this game is going to be a lot like that game on Saturday against Miami and Florida. So I would, in some sense, because of the underestimation, I'd kind of give Oregon the edge in this game. So I don't exactly follow your train of thought there.
I'm not looking at the conferences. I mean, I don't care if they're SEC or I don't care where they're from. I mean, I'm just looking at Auburn, at their defense. I mean, defensively, they were 14th in the country last year in scoring defense. Oregon was 48th. Offensively, they were fairly similar. Okay.
Yeah.
But the difference in this game is going to be Auburn's ability to stop is to stop Justin Herbert in the Oregon offense, and the whole fast-paced thing. But Auburn runs a fast-paced offense, so their defense is used to that in practice. They're used to playing that. Neither team was great last year. I mean, Auburn was 8-5. Oregon was 9-4. But you can't compare the schedules from a year ago. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, if Auburn beat Washington, their non-conference schedule, Oregon played nobody. They played Bowling Green, Portland State, San Jose State. I mean, come on. The Pac-12 was down last year, so Oregon lost to Stanford, Washington State, Arizona, Utah. I mean, they lost to the teams that the top teams in the league. I'm just looking at the teams and how they stack up. And the nice thing is, it's a neutral game.
Yeah, I like Jim Leavitt.
My point was,
I like Jim Leavitt in this game.
This is going to be a close game. I agree with you. It's going to be close, and it may very well hinge on the inexperience of the Auburn quarterback, because Malzahn, he's announced Nix as the starter, but he's got three guys he can throw a blanket over and start any one of them, or switch them if he wants to. He probably will, or he probably can. But Auburn's offense and experience, granted, but Oregon's defense isn't any good. I mean, it was
Jim Leavitt's first year, so he was switching up. He was going from a 4-3 to a 3-4. So the personnel on those defense is different. So I think Leavitt over this year, he was able last year to reduce points per game marginally, but I think this year we'll see a bigger jump and a better result from Jim Leavitt's defense. And I hope that's going to show up on tape on Saturday. I wouldn't suspect that this would be one of those blowout games. I mean, if we look at their bowl game, it was a 7-6 game. Michigan State couldn't put up points on them. Michigan State lost because they only got 2 field goals in the game. All they did in the Red Box Bowl is they allowed 2 field goals the whole game. Arizona, who's
I put no stock in bowl games, though.
I'm just saying.
I put no stock in bowl games. Well, the bowl games mean nothing to me because different coaches. I mean, bowl games don't mean anything to anybody. Because you don't know who they're playing and what they're how much partying they do, all that kind of stuff. I will say this, that this could be a tough game. I mean, and I haven't made my pick yet. I mean, I haven't made a pick yet in this game. you know, all I was saying was I think Oregon's overrated based on what they did last year and what they have coming in, and who they have to play, because all the teams they have to beat this year, they lost to last year. And I'm just saying that I don't see that much improvement in Oregon. They got basically the same team back.
Yeah.
And so
they have a head coach that's coaching the SEC.
I don't see why they're ranked as highly as they are.
Well, because they got another year.
Understand. Now,
I'll agree with that.
11.
I'll fight. I'll go with you. I'll go up to bat with you on that. On the ranking part. Again, I don't agree with most of these rankings. They're silly to even before week 5 to really put up. That's why in all the time that power rankings. I mean, they make the most sense. But even then, again, that's based on statistics. What have those teams done? There's more basis for those. But these preseason stuff, you can't really put a whole lot into them. I mean, I don't necessarily think they're 11th best team in the country, but I clearly know. I thought before watching Florida play Miami that Florida was not the 8th ranked team in the country. I didn't think they were a top 15 team. And Felipe Franks is a liability.
Agreed. And I tend to look at things. I like to look at where teams will probably end up, right? And in that case, you can't have 4 or 5 SEC West teams ranked in the top 15 because they can't end up there, right? They can't possibly end up there.
Yeah.
Because you're all going to lose, right? You can't have all of them with one loss because they play 5 games against each other. They can't have it.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think Oregon-Auburn is a really fairly even matchup for this early in the season. I'll say that.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty
I
even.
agree with that.
It has potential to be fairly even, right? I mean, that's what makes it a compelling game for this weekend is because it's fairly even.
And it's a neutral site.
It's a neutral site. That's the fun part of it is you can't say, well, Oregon had to go all the way to Alabama or Oregon had to go all the way to Oregon. Nope. They're pretty much meeting in the middle. Now, I think Oregon has to go a little bit further, but it's not a big deal. It's not an order of magnitude big deal. It's like okay, you can't. If Oregon's going to play a neutral site game, they have to go at least to Arlington, Texas, because that's where they play them, right? They don't play them in any other club. So that's one of the places they play it. I mean, hell, it could have been in Atlanta, because that's the other neutral site games usually are, right? Well, that's not fair because Auburn is practically in Atlanta. So for Oregon and Auburn to play an early season game, like LSU Texas are playing in Arlington as well. No, LSU's playing at Texas. That's a home game. But still, there'll be a lot of LSU people at Texas. I'll guarantee you that. But this is great. I think this is a fairly even football game. We'll have to see. I give the edge to Auburn's defense, and that's not because they're an SEC team. It's because it's Auburn. They have a good defense. Okay, there are some SEC teams that don't have a good defense, but Auburn happens to have a pretty good defense. And if they come and play, we'll see. Oregon's Oregon. I mean, they're going to be prone to turnovers. They play a wide open, solid offense. We'll see what happens. It will be a little bit of a contrast in style, but that's what makes these these interconference this one intersectional game so good. And I'd love to see more of it. I just think we're I'm applauding Auburn for actually playing a big boy non-conference game because
absolutely
most SEC schools don't, right? So hats off to Gus Malzahn and Auburn for taking this on because Alabama sure hadn't, not this year. They're playing Duke in Atlanta. Oh, big deal! Wow, playing a Power 5 team. Woo, Duke, come on. So that's going to be.
That's the thing. Is
not,
like
that's not going to be pretty.
That
won't be pretty.
As most people know,
new quarterback.
Oh, I tried to be objective with it and looking at like, okay, maybe Duke will come in, and that's just thing is. I'm more optimistic for the first half of Florida Atlantic, Ohio State than I am Duke, Alabama. I think this season, season for Alabama, it's going to be one of those seasons where, you know how some players will go, they're trying to shoot up the stats, pad the stats season, to really pound their chest. I think Alabama might do that this season. They have one of the best wideout groupings in all of college football. One for the ages, at least. Tua, a guy that seems to be everybody's runner-up now for the Heisman, though he hasn't changed any. Tua's biggest fallback is he takes too many hits he just shouldn't take. But he's a gamer, and he wants to win. So it's hard to get that out of a guy. I mean, and this defense is again, a great defense. I think they're stronger along the defensive line than people want to give them credit for. And they still could have a liability over the top if anybody has enough time to throw it over the top. So, I think this might be one of those statement seasons where they go out and they just want to say, okay, we didn't start number one. That's fine. I think Alabama's probably the best at using that underdog fuel when I don't think really anybody ever thinks they're an underdog, but they have a way of, imposing that on themselves like nobody else. It's kind of...
Well, they're going to have to. They're going to have to do that because their schedule's so weak, and it was weak last year.
It's weak every year.
Okay. Huh?
It's weak every year.
No, it's weaker. It's like it's getting weaker every year. It's like, they just find ways to make it worse than it was the year before. I don't know how they do that, but now their SEC schedule inside the division is harder because A&M is going to be better and LSU is going to be better. Okay, so they are going to have a little bit tougher time within the conference. But Duke, New Mexico State, Western Carolina, Southern Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's like really? Last year at least they started off against Louisville, which by the way had been a really good team. For
I feel
2 or
like
3 years, right?
these teams that they play are just applying for the football grant. I swear that's all it is.
Well,
it's the Alabama football grant.
Well, they're just getting $500,000. They're getting $500,000 to come in. I mean, it's a big payday for Duke. Which, by the way, I would like to see them at least do something with their stadium. It's an embarrassment.
And Southern Miss plays both them
Duke,
and Mississippi State. By the way,
Duke athletic facilities are an embarrassment to the ACC. The amount of money that they get at that university from the football program and the basketball program, it's an embarrassment that they can't upgrade those facilities.
Yeah.
Their football stadium is a pit. It is a pit. It is horrible. And they're getting to go to Alabama and actually to Atlanta, get a big payday for a game against Alabama. It's embarrassing. They shouldn't be allowed to do it. Give that game to somebody who deserves it, who's actually trying to upgrade their facilities in their program. And everybody talks about Cameron Indoor Stadium, this great basketball arena, right? It's a pit. It's not even air conditioned. The damn place is a pit. It's an embarrassment. The only reason it is like it is because they won't spend any money on it. I mean, let's call it what it is. Duke's just taking money. Oh, Cameron Indoor Stadium. Wow, what a great place. It seats 700-800 people, and the people jump up and down. Come on. Who wants to go there? I wouldn't want to go there. You know, I want a nice facility. You know, most SEC, HC, you know, they're spending a lot of money on their facility. Anyway, that's my rant for the night, Matthew, on Duke. But and they're going to get the crap kicked out of them in Atlanta Saturday night. We know that. I mean, it's not even going to be close. But Alabama had better run the table because their schedule's so weak. They have to run the table like they did last year. If they don't, a one-loss Alabama might not get in the playoff. That's how weak the schedule is, depending on who the loss is to. And they could have a couple losses. In fact, I think they will have a couple losses. I think LSU's going to beat them.
You know who I think is...
I think they're going to lose to Texas. And A&M. I think they're going to lose A&M.
I think A&M is probably... This. Would you say A&M is the second best school in the West? Truly?
School, or you mean football team this year?
Both.
I mean the football team this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but their schedule's brutal.
I'm not saying are they going to finish the best.
I think LSU's going to win the conference, but
I don't know. I think the West is more over. I think the West is kind of overrated, to be honest with you. You know, more and more I look at it. I mean, it really is.
Maybe it is, but to judge.
Why is I don't get why do
some kind of measure?
Why is Mississippi State built up so much? Mississippi State on a year-by-year basis, really the only two teams that they ever play is Alabama, and an A&M. It really is like that's what it is. You know, they scheduled a home and home with K-State and a home and home with the Ragin' Cajuns.
It's all bad. It's all bad. LSU plays Texas, though. LSU travels to Texas.
Yeah. Well, okay, so LSU's number 2. Sorry, LSU's number 2. But the thing is, they don't even play...
A&M plays Clemson. A&M travels to Clemson. Auburn's playing Oregon. And Alabama's playing... nobody. Okay? Georgia's playing Notre Dame. Okay, Georgia plays Georgia Tech.
Mississippi State might be the most overrated school from year to year.
Well, they're ranked 39th in my ranking here, in my power rankings. That's not very good. And they're not ranked up there at all in terms of what I've been using as a ranking. But the West is top heavy because you've got Ole Miss and Arkansas down at the bottom, right? I mean they're both neither one of them's cracking the top 60 in the FBS. So and Mississippi State's down there too, but it's a top heavy division. I mean you got
Mississippi State is actually in the AP poll would be 28th, just ahead of Miami.
No. See, that's a poll.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
That's a poll. That's a poll.
And the same for the coaches poll. I'm just saying that's what the preseason rankings are. This is what I'm talking about. How I don't get how. Like, how do you base that? Okay, so good. They had a recruiting class that was ranked 24th. That's cool. Cool. Good for them.
But it's like Penn State. Penn State's ranked 15th by the coaches poll.
Yeah.
Right? Penn State is nowhere near the 15th. They're not close to 15.
Well, 14th in coaches and 15th
They're
in.
lucky to be. Yeah. They're lucky to be 30, 28, 27, 26, whatever. They're not 15. But they have a name. They have a brand. So these polls, I mean, and that's where they put them. A&M really doesn't have any real business being at 12. I mean, but they are. They haven't performed as 12. I mean, they were 9-4 last year.
And then they had the 6th ranked
Right.
recruiting class just ahead of Oregon, who had the 7th ranked recruiting class. So I think that's kind of.
You know where I stand in recruiting class.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying.
Right, because recruiting classes are. If Jimbo Fisher recruits you, you're a 4-star. Therefore, their recruiting class is really good. Because if you didn't recruit them, then they weren't good. And right, it's like if Nick Saban shows up at your house, you're a 5-star athlete because obviously Nick Saban knows what he's talking about. Nobody ever goes back and I did this. Remember, I did a blog on this a couple of years ago, and I correlated the recruiting classes with their performance. Remember that?
Yeah.
It's not a really good. It's not a strong correlation. Florida State had Jimbo Fisher had top 5 recruiting class at Florida State for 5 years in a row. He won with Bobby Bowden's athletes. He never won with his own.
Yeah.
And he never did anything. And then the program tanks, and he goes off to Texas A&M. And he gets to A&M, and they go, "Oh, your recruiting classes are top 5." Well, it's because it's Jimbo Fisher. I'm not saying he didn't get good athletes. I'm not saying he's not a good recruiter. I'm just saying that there's not a strong. Do you think UCF's recruiting classes were in the top 15? No, they were probably top 70, 80, 90, maybe. And Scott Frost went in there and put a team together because he could coach. So it's I look for performance on the field. I'm just looking back and thinking, I don't think Penn State justifies 15. UCF probably does. Cincinnati probably deserves to be ranked, and they're not. Right? I mean, why is Penn State ranked and Cincinnati's not? Did Penn State justify that ranking over Cincinnati? I don't think so. I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, I would say Penn State is better than Cincinnati. I would favor them in a.
It's all.
Either way, I think Penn State beats Cincinnati in college, at Penn State or in Happy Valley or on a neutral site. I think Penn State wins that. 80% of the time. Obviously, I'd give them a couple flu games.
I don't disagree with that, but the fact that Penn State's ranked 15th.
I don't think 15th's bad for Penn State. I think because they have a solid coach. I could go back through and break it down. I mean, I can defend Penn State being ranked 15th. I can't say Mississippi State should be ranked 29th. I can't argue that.
Well, no, I don't agree with you. I agree with you. I think Mississippi State's more like 40th.
Yeah.
35 to 40.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think Penn State's more 25 to 30 than they are 15. I mean, they only returned 5 offensive starters.
Well, I have 6
off
here.
a team that went. Well, I've got 5. I mean, I'm not counting special teams. I'm just counting. My publication says 5. Off a team that went 8-5. Off a team with 9-4. That's not a 15th ranked team to me. You're bringing 5 back on offense, 6 back on defense, off a team that went 9-4, and you beat Appalachian State, Kent State, and Pitt in your non-conference games. I mean, come on. So you went.
That's
you
the thing
lost the
is,
bowl game to Kentucky. I don't care about that. So I mean, I'm just saying that a 15th ranked team. I mean, I look at them ranked. I think their ranking might be 10 spots higher than where I have them in my power rankings. But the thing that's nice about college football is, and we'll know, it's pro football as well. You can speculate all you want, but starting this weekend, we're going to get to see these teams actually play football. Now, Penn State hosts Idaho, so we won't know anything about Penn State for some of these teams we won't know anything for a month, right? Depending on the non-conference schedule, we won't know. But a game that we should be talking about, one of the SAT bowls, Northwestern Stanford.
yes.
Now that's a good ball game. Northwestern, they're outside the top 25 in rankings, but some publications have them really close to top 25. Stanford is 20 to 25. Okay, so these are two fairly evenly matched teams. Both have killer schedules. Okay, by all indications. Stanford's schedule is ridiculously tough. So, they might, if Stanford goes 8-4, they have a great season, just because how hard their schedule is, inside the conference and outside the conference. Northwestern, by virtue of their game against Stanford, has a tough game, right? I think this is an interesting ball game. I think this will be very, very interesting. Especially it'll also help you. You're a Big Ten West guy,
And
how good is Northwestern, and how big a threat are they? How big a threat are they? Because I think it's Wisconsin. It's Wisconsin, Nebraska, Northwestern, and Iowa, right in the West. Those are the top teams.
well,
Before,
I can
before
say
the
this
17th.
about Northwestern: they're a threat, but what level of threat they are from year to year varies so much. What we know coming into this game is they still have Pat Fitzgerald still has not announced who his starter is, and he's not going to announce who the starter is until literally just before they walk out. He's still laying it that much. He wants Stanford to prepare for both quarterbacks, which they're different. They've both had a level of success.
It's a smart thing to.
Yeah.
It's a smart thing to do. That's a smart thing to do. Yeah, Northwestern's one of those programs that's interesting to try to deal with because they're not. They don't reload. They're a program that has to build. They have to recruit pretty well, and then 2 or 3 years later they have a couple good seasons and they fall back again because they can't sustain that just because they can't continue that level. They have to they bet on some guys and they go after some guys that they're going to be good, and then they turn out to be good, and then Northwestern can compete. And so last year they were good. I mean they still lost 5 games, but they did win the West, right? And so you say, well, can we win the West again? Well, I don't think so, because they benefited from a down Nebraska team, a down Wisconsin team. Well, they beat Wisconsin. I mean, they benefited from that, right? And so an inconsistent Iowa team. They won a lot of close games, man. They won a lot of close games last year. They beat Nebraska in overtime, and Iowa by 4, Illinois by 8. They benefited from all of that, and so we'll see. I don't see them. I don't see Northwestern as competing for the West again this year. I think they'll be a good team, but I do like this game. It'll be a fun game to watch. I think Stanford. Stanford's probably. I mean, they're in the second. I have them as the third toughest division in college football. and you could make a case that they're the second toughest division in college football, the Pac-12 North, with Washington State, Oregon, Stanford, and Cal's not bad. Cal was a bowl team last year, so you've got a tough North there, and so Stanford also plays Northwestern and Notre Dame in their non-conference. So they have a tough schedule, and this game is going to be fun. I love these intersectional games. I wish we saw more of them. I really do. And by the way, Stanford travels to UCF. So Stanford, I believe in my analysis, has the toughest overall schedule in all of college football.
Yeah,
no, USC and Stanford. USC, Stanford, UCLA.
Yeah,
all in the Pac-12 have the toughest schedules in college football.
Northwestern
and
is
South Carolina's right there behind them.
Is 25th in the coaches poll. They're ranked 25th in the coaches poll.
Who is?
Northwestern.
Stanford. Oh, Northwestern. Okay.
Northwestern is ranked 25th in the coaches poll. So,
I think I have the AP poll showing up.
That's
Stanford's 25th.
AP poll is generally the one that.
Northwestern's right behind them. Yeah, right behind. They're so close. These two teams are they're really close, right? I mean, they're and the power rankings I have Stanford 22nd, Northwestern 26th. I mean, they're really close, and so it's a good ball game.
90 really seconds.
I think they're both defensive line. I mean, Pat Fitzgerald's done a great job at Northwestern, and he's focused on defense because that's how you stay competitive.
Yeah,
keep the game's close, hope to win. Catch lightning in a bottle every 3 years. Maybe get a dynamic quarterback. Somebody that's under the radar from somebody else. And get your running game going. That's what they do, and that's what happened last year.
But
right?
I'd say
60 seconds.
The stars aligned, right? The stars aligned.
Exactly.
Northwestern wins the Big Ten. Listen, good for them. But it's not happening this year. I mean, you've got a couple teams that are. I mean, Nebraska's going to be better. Iowa's going to be better.
Purdue's probably going to. I think every team has upped it one. Again, I don't know how much Rutgers really did, but every team has upped it one, and should look better this year. But
I think so.
I think if you're talking about teams to do bets when you're betting on a team, Northwestern has to be one of the toughest because, I mean, if you just look at last year, they beat Purdue in a very close game.
10
High
seconds.
hopes for Purdue that were a letdown last year. Then they get boat raced by 21-7 by Duke. They lose by a little under a touch. They lose by 5 points to Akron, right? The Zips that would not play Nebraska. They would not reschedule that game. They lose to Michigan only by 3, though. And then they beat Michigan State. They beat Nebraska in overtime. They barely beat Rutgers. They beat Wisconsin by, 4 points? 5 points? Notre Dame they lose to by 10. So it's all kept really close games with exception to, Duke.
Right.
Duke and Ohio State beat them 45-24. But everything else were close games. It's like they played down or up to all of their competition. So it's hard to tell from week to week what are you going to get out of this team? Rutgers is a win. But how do you figure out what the line is? They're at or what, you're saying they're a road favorite -3? So they covered at Rutgers? I'm pretty sure they didn't cover the line, whatever it was. It was Rutgers on the road,
Well, they benefited from. They just benefited from a confluence of circumstances in the Big Ten West that the other teams beat each other.
They're like the Ryan
right?
Fitzpatrick of teams. That guy is a curse. I'm going to say it. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a curse. Every team he's ever went to, the starting quarterback has troubles, gets hurt, somehow doesn't, He goes down to Miami, and now he's looked at as, he's the starter. He's beating Rosen now. And I'm just like, man, if I was a quarterback in the league, I would not want Ryan Fitzpatrick around. He's a jinx to starting quarterbacks, or hopeful starting quarterbacks. And it's not because he's really good. Like, he has his Fitzmagic moments, but that's it. They're moments.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're few and far between. He loses more games than he wins. But evidently he's a really good practice player. He's a good leader. And obviously, he's an Ivy League guy. He's a smart guy. He's a likable person, clearly. But that's the thing is,
Hey, look who's starting for the Redskins. Case Keenum. He's the Redskins' opening day starting quarterback.
He's like he's Ryan Fitzpatrick 2.0.
I know. He really is. He really is. Let's mention. Because one more interesting game that we haven't talked about. We just mentioned it. Boise State, Florida State. We mentioned Boise State's schedule, I think, which is no. We mentioned BYU's schedule,
and Boise was on it.
Boise State. Boise's in that category of teams like UCF and Houston and a couple others that can wreck the party. Right? The Power 5 party. And if Boise State can get by Florida State, and by the way, that's a, in air quotes, neutral site game in Jacksonville, Florida. This is one of those ones you're talking about, which not really neutral. I mean, let's see. Boise has to fly over Tallahassee to get to Jacksonville, and the guys in Jacksonville will take a bus. I mean, the guys at FSU will take a bus to Jacksonville, right? This is neutral. This is a quasi Florida State home game, but Boise could run the table. I mean, they are the cream of the Mountain West crop, and so they also play Portland State, by the way. But they don't really have a lot of competition. I mean, the Hawaii team I saw the other night looked really good, but that was because they caught, Arizona on a, first week of the season. They didn't have legs under them yet. And by the way, Boise doesn't have to go to Hawaii. They host Hawaii. But Boise State does play at BYU. But if Boise, they've got a chance. They're, I think it's going to be between Boise and UCF. Who gets that group of 6 invite to the New Year's Day Bowl. And so this is an interesting game. If Boise can take care of business, if they can beat Florida State, that's a big deal for the group of 5, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
So you have Cincinnati, Houston, and Boise. Now, obviously, Florida State's not in the class of Oklahoma. No, they are because at UCLA. I was thinking ahead to next week's game between Cincinnati and Ohio State. If Cincinnati beats UCLA this week and then heads to Ohio State next week, Cincinnati's in that conversation, but the American's going to take care of itself. So you got to figure out, because that's a great conference. But no, this Boise State game against I'm going to say at Florida State, although it's in Jacksonville, it's an away game. It's a home game for Florida State, no question. And Boise has a history of great opening games against, quality opponents.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the last game I had on my list that I was, looking at of note for this week. Now, you got Georgia Tech at Clemson Thursday night, but I think that's more looking to see how badly Clemson can beat Georgia Tech. Not so much in terms of I don't give Georgia Tech much of a chance in that game. But, now I take it you were sounding some dissatisfaction that the ACC network was scarfing some of these games.
Yeah.
Do you not have the ACC network? Is that why you?
I don't. No, I don't have the ACC network. I don't pay extra for the ACC network. No. It's not included with ESPN or ESPN Plus. It's an additional purchase.
Well, I signed up for it, but I got 3 months free, and at the end of 3 months, I'm going to cancel it. But I do have it for football season.
Sign up for it for football season, and then you can cancel.
Yeah. So I get football season and cancel. Anyway, and so because I had to sign up for an extra package, I do agree that because I get the SEC network without having to pay extra. It's part of my, but I think it's because I fall into the SEC
footprint. Well, because you're right there where, you're right there where Arkansas is. So.
Yeah, exactly. So.
I mean, you're about as close as you can get to Arkansas without living on campus. Kind of,
Yeah, right, whatever. Yeah, kind of. Like, I'm so happy to be able to watch Arkansas football.
You're excited.
It's an absolute privilege. I'm Tech. I'm
and
Virginia Tech.
You're just waiting to fly in the Jones family helicopter. You're like Mater over there. Just I want to ride the helicopter.
Well, I usually, I because of my wife's position, I am required to go to some of the Arkansas football games. Ouch.
They don't listen. They don't listen to our show. Antonio Brown listens, but Arkansas does not listen to our show. So you're in luck.
Yeah. So I am. I probably am. So I'm going to sign off. But so next week we should probably talk about some NFL because NFL will be starting. And so we did not get a chance to talk about Andrew Luck tonight, but
I'm going to do that.
That was interesting.
I'm going to do that. But you should talk about Tiger's knee since you're the golf editor before you sign off, though.
I will. Did not appear to be serious. Just routine surgery, and he expects to play in October in Japan. His next tournament.
The Zuzu.
But, I'll say this about Tiger. I think he's about done. We watched him. He won the Masters. Well, he won the Tour Championship in September last year, won the Masters in April. And since then hasn't really done anything. He didn't even look interested. I was watching him in the last tournament he played. He just, I think he's done. And I don't mean that physically. I think mentally, I think he looks at that 18 majors, and I don't think he can get there. He will try because he will have exemptions to the, and his world rankings can allow him into the majors, all four majors next year. And beyond that, the
isn't he a captain?
British Open and Masters. He's the captain of the President's Cup.
Yeah.
In December, so he's not going to play. He'll be captain. So he will be around, and he'll play some. But I think that winning the Masters in April was kind of his mic drop. We'll see. Maybe the knee was bothering him. Maybe he had health issues. We never know because Tiger won't say anything. Tiger doesn't talk. Tiger doesn't reveal that about himself. He never has. He never will. He's probably doing more of it now than he ever has. But I just don't. I don't see the will to fight that he had to get through 2018 and through the Masters last year. Now, that being said, I could have said the same thing 2 years ago. I didn't. I think I wrote differently. I just see a different mindset on the course itself. He's shown signs of almost resignation. He's resigned to the fact that he can't do it. And that's something I haven't seen before. But he is 43 years old. He's been playing this game at a high level since he was, knee-high to a grasshopper. I mean, he won 6 consecutive USGA titles, something nobody's ever done, nobody ever will. 3 USGA juniors and 3 US amateurs in 6 years. That will never happen again. He's won 15 majors. He's won 80 golf tournaments. He might try to win a couple more to catch Sam Snead, but I just think that in this latest knee issue just shows me, I think, it's health. You get in your 40s as an athlete. I mean, Tom Brady has just had the one leg injury his entire career. That's why he's been able to stay healthy. Roger Federer's had very little health issues, and he's playing into it. He's 40, 39. Excuse me. Those are the guys I'm thinking about when I think of Tiger, because those are his contemporaries in excellence. Brady and Federer. Phil Mickelson's been able to play until he's 49, but he was kind of done. He won his last major 6 years ago, and so you look at the age of 43, 44 in golf, and that's pretty much it. You can compete, you can play, but you're not going to win. And so I think that's where we are with Tiger. We'll see. I don't expect. I think we've seen the best of him. I think we've seen the last of him playing 16, 17, 18 tournaments a year. I think he's just going to play when he needs to, and maybe stay sharp and try to grab another Masters or British Open, which he can do.
Yeah, I mean,
St. Andrews.
I think
St. Andrews in 2021. Okay, Tiger. Okay, so you got the Masters every year until he's 65. He can play. Okay, so he's got 20 years of Masters left. Okay.
Yeah.
And he has 22 years of British Opens left if he chooses to do that. Okay, so he's got St. Andrews in 2021, where he's won, I believe, twice, 2 British Opens, and so he knows his courses. He doesn't have to prepare for those courses. Just goes out and just remembers how to play, and we've seen him do very well on those kind of courses. So. But I think.
And he's won the Masters 5 times.
Yep, and he can do that. I mean, he did it last year. I mean,
yeah,
he just did it this year.
The thing is,
and so you saw Jack Nicklaus won at age 46. We've seen guys compete. We've seen Fred Couples compete into his 50s. We've seen guys that know that course, and the Masters. The 2 golf courses in the world where experience is more important than anything else are Augusta National and St. Andrews. And he has a chance to play Augusta every year, and St. Andrews, I think, 2 more times before he turns 50. So we'll see. But I believe that the days Tiger admitted he played so much golf to get back, because he had to play to get into the Tour Championship and the playoffs and all that.
Yeah,
I think he wore himself out. I think he actually wore himself out. He admitted it, and then once he won the Masters, like, I did it. I proved everybody wrong. Nobody thought I'd win again. No one thought I'd win a major again, except that I did because I wrote about it. And he did it, and I think once he got there, it was like, whew, I did it. I'm not getting to 18. He knows that. He knows that. Historically, it's so statistically impossible. When you think about it, I think only 3 people have won a major older than him. They each won 1. And he'd have to do that, equal that, all by himself. So for him to just win 1 more is statistically incredible. And for him to do it 3 times is almost unbelievable. Now, it is Tiger Woods, greatest golfer of all time. I say golfer, not the greatest of all time. That's Jack. Jack has, but give Tiger 30 years. Jack's almost 80. Jack has a lot of, other things that he's done for the game of golf. I've met Jack Nicklaus. I talked to Jack Nicklaus. It's amazing. But the best golfer, the best ball striker, the best putter, the best everything, that's Tiger Woods. And Jack Nicklaus admits that himself. They all do. I've had the chance to talk to Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, Lee Trevino, Tom Watson about Tiger Woods. They all admit. And when you talk to them and you interview them, it all comes back to Tiger. Why do you think that is? It's because he's the best player they've ever seen. And so I think his career is not over, but I believe his competitive week in, week out, playing on the PGA Tour is probably over.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but majors aren't back to back. So you usually have a week or 2 weeks, sometimes 3 between majors.
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
4 weeks between majors.
So he could literally decide, I'm only going to play in majors. So I'm going to go 2 weeks ahead of the tournament in, wherever. For 2 weeks, I'm just going to play this course and get to know this course.
Yep.
And familiarize myself with this course, and then play in that major event and not worry about the other stuff.
Right, and he doesn't have to be a member of the PGA Tour, because to keep your tour credentials, you actually have to play a minimum number of events. But because he's exempt into these events, regardless of his tour status, because the PGA Tour doesn't actually run any of these events. The PGA Tour only runs the Players' Championship. It does not operate the majors. The R&A is in charge of the British Open, or what they call the Open Championship. We call the British Open, to differentiate it from the U.S. Open. The USGA runs the U.S. Open. The Masters runs the Masters. And the PGA of America runs the PGA. And so he can get into all those events without actually having to be a member of the PGA Tour. So he probably will. So we'll see him at majors, and we'll see him at high-profile events, or his own event if he wants to, give himself an exemption, whatever. But I don't think we're going to see him as a regular on the PGA Tour anymore. I just don't. And that's fine. Heck, everybody has to quit at some point. I mean, all athletes have to, stop playing, unless you're Bernard Langer, and you can still win the doggone Champions Tour title at age 62. Okay, that's an amazing guy. In a number of ways, he's an amazing guy. But so that's my statement on Tiger. We'll see what happens. I mean, he may get a resurgence. He may take a few months off, which he's probably going to, and come back in February, and maybe he'll tee it up at Torrey Pines in San Diego, finish third, and all of a sudden, wow, I'm back. I doubt it. I just don't know that he wants to do that anymore. I don't know him. I'd love to talk to him about it, but I don't think he wants to do it anymore. He even said in an interview last month, he said, golf was never the most important thing. He was interviewed, I forget which tournament it was, I think it was the British Open. One of the guys said, well, it appears now that golf isn't the most important thing to you. And he goes, it never was. It never has been. Well, at age 43, then, if it never has been, it won't be now for sure. He's got kids, He's got foundation, he has charities, he has a restaurant, he's all sorts of stuff. He doesn't need it. And so I don't think he's going to continue it. I mean, he'll play. He'll try to chase that 18th major and the 82nd tour win, but he's not going to. We're not going to see him grinding it out. And why should we? He shouldn't have to. He proved everything he had to prove in April in Augusta when he walked off with the Masters with that green jacket. He proved everybody wrong. He said, "I finally did it," and I think that was it. So that was his mic drop.
It very well could be.
All right, man. Well, I'll talk to you next week. We'll have a lot. I mean, I'm sure we'll have some upsets this weekend in college football.
How many?
We'll talk about.
How many upsets? Don't tell we won't go over which games. But how many upsets? Three? Three is a safe number. I think 3 is a safe number. I'd agree with 3.
I'll say 3.
I would have guessed 3 too.
Let me qualify that. Let's define the upset. Either a top 25 team losing, okay, or a Power 5 team losing to a non-Power 5 team. How about that? That's we'll qualify that as an upset.
Okay.
Right. So if Cincinnati beats UCLA, that's an upset.
Yeah. Which I don't really think it is. When you really look at the football side of it,
it may not be. I mean,
but yeah.
But
no.
Obviously, in terms of the odds makers, that's an upset, right?
Yeah.
But let's define what an upset would be. Which let's not say an upset, maybe a surprise or whatever. Let's say there's at least 3 of those.
Yeah. But that's the one I've predicted.
And read my blog on Thursday. I may predict more than that. I haven't gotten to all the games. I may predict more than that. Right? So look at some of these games. I mean, right? I mean, there's some games we didn't talk about, but, Northern Iowa State. Northern Iowa is a really good FCS program. They might go into Ames and just, pull a stunner. Who knows? I hope not, but
I don't think so.
It could.
I've talked with their coaches.
No, I don't.
Northern Iowa.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off.
Okay.
I'll talk to you.
We'll be
next week.
back next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.
With Kevin. So, in the broadcast, we have. Where are we at? Where's the clock? Why did the clock fall down? Okay, there it is. Digital clock, not the actual clock. There's no actual clock on the wall, but 25 minutes or so left in the show. I do want to highlight a little bit more on Tiger Woods' situation before I head over to end out the show on the NFL and Andrew Luck. He had an arthroscopic surgery on his knee. So arthroscopic surgery on a knee isn't what it used to be a few years ago. I mean, it's a couple week recovery. A couple weeks here, he'll be back. He's already walking after just having the surgery, and he'll start swinging again here soon. I think Kevin brings up a great point on, is his career done? Is it over? And as far as what we might have thought that resurgence would be, maybe it is. However, I'm still on the optimistic side. And what I laid out with Kevin, again, you got a month in between each of these major events. He can, for 4 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever he wants, just go to the major events and focus on that course alone. And put himself in a better position for those records. Most majors, And obviously, he winning seeing him over the past year and a half, we see that he can still compete. And obviously, winning his 5th green jacket at Augusta this past year has showed us he can win majors. He is a very competitive person. And he's a very confident person. The thing is, a lot of these guys tell you, I don't read the reports. I don't pay attention to statistics. I don't play for the records. But if you think somebody that is high enough on themselves, confident enough in themselves, that are close to that all-time status that they wouldn't try. Look at Kobe Bryant. He put up 60-some points in his last NBA game. Why? Because that's Kobe. He wanted to go out as much on top as he could. He got the biggest contract he could get and scored the most points as he could in that last game. And that's how he went out. He saw what it was in the front office is they weren't going to be able to put a team around him to compete for a title. So he went out and just basked in the last season, scored 60-some points in his last game, and dropped the mic and walked off. Literally. Mamba out. So, I don't think Tiger's done. I think Tiger's going to continue to go for those all-time records. He wants to be the most. He wants to be the winningest golfer in history. He's known by the greats as being the best. But he wants to say that he's won the most majors. If he can, he wants to be. The arthroscopic surgery on his knee was just taking away one of those little annoyances that he had problems with. What had kept him out from being competitive was his back. Right? So that's what kept him from being competitive the last few years. And his back got right. He felt a little something in the knee. They went in. They cleared out the problem. And he'll be back in October in Japan playing in the Zuzu. I think he will play in the President's Cup, which is in December. And then he has his event in the Bahamas in December too. January, December. I don't remember. Kevin remembers better than I do. I know it's around that time of year. I don't watch it because that's bowl season. I'm very busy during that time of year. But still, I think it's very attainable for him, and I think he agrees with it being attainable as well. So I look for Tiger to continue to compete there. And similarly with Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, for those didn't know, if you drafted him in your fantasy team this year, you should probably drop him and find someone else. Hopefully he wasn't your first quarterback pick, but has decided to retire. Because the last 3 years he has struggled with his health, with rehab, getting back into the game and that mental, more so the mental struggle of having to go through those things each and every time. So some people have never had to deal with recovery. In high school, I did. I fractured the distal growth plate in one knee my sophomore year. And then my senior year, I dislocated my kneecap. So one was playing football, one was playing basketball. Separate knees. So coming back from those, it's slow because you can't do much because you can't put weight on it. It has to heal. You have to deal with inflammation going up and down, fluids. You can't do much for months. And then you get back into the swing of things, doing stuff again. And some people have that issue. There seems to be some sort of hesitation. You get worried now that, man, I don't want something to happen. I get hurt again, and then I'm back going through all that sideline doing everything. As you get hurt, it hampers a lot of things you can do. If you've ever been on crutches and had to go upstairs, it's a pain. It's a pain to get anywhere. If you're using crutches, try carrying something with your arms at the same time. It's not going to happen. So, just the day-to-day grind, having to go to rehab, having to, now that it's healed enough, now you need to work on the range of motion, the flexibility, at times I have my middle finger, I dislocated and fractured. I relocated it myself. But even now, it's crooked, And there is, for a good couple years, I wasn't able to close my fist all the way. And, have that full range of motion I would normally have with that finger. Even now, if I try to flex my fingers, it's about an inch in front of the other fingers. If I'm trying to spread my fingers, it still doesn't. I don't have that range of motion I used to have. So these are just a few little things. And over the course of years and being an athlete at a high level, actors deal with that too. What happens is the business and organization, whatever it is, it has to continue. They'll wait for a certain extent, like in Andrew Luck's case. He said he was willing to retire and forfeit the money. The Oilers, as a stand-up, doing a very stand-up thing, saying, hey, no, you keep the money. Take your time coming back. If you want to come back, the door is open for you. And I'm not saying he's done. And he might get the itch again to play. But that, wrapping your mind around the rehab part of it is just tough. One person I give a lot of credit for sounding off about this, and he does things in his own way, but Chidi Hanatu was talking about, Andrew Luck says it, and a lot of people want to, let's jump on board with it, because Andrew Luck said it was a mental health thing. But in other cases, a lot of players, if we look at, they struggled with, depression or mental health, and people, they're not believed. People, like, if we go to the NBA, Michael Beasley, there was a writer that was talking about it just this week, I heard in an interview. when Michael Beasley was drafted. He battled with depression. And he was mocked with saying, oh, God forbid you make millions of dollars being a top draft pick, doing a job that's a children's game, and you're depressed. Oh, poor you. Yeah. Depression doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how much money you make. And a lot of times, the thing is, like, we look at money as kind of like this something in your life. Well, money is just a tool. They say money can't buy you happiness. Well, it does give you access to things that maybe you wouldn't otherwise have, but it's very empty. That's why you said you think about what would you buy somebody? What kind of gift would you give somebody that has everything, that has all the money in the world? Or what do you do? You'd have to do something uber personal to you, that's unique to you and to them. You know? It's just, that's the thing, is mental health isn't a joke. We've come a long ways on understanding, in some ways, what mental health is. I think a lot of people are mental health posers, where they really don't understand it, but it's a thing to say, so they say it, you know? A lot of people talk about how many veterans in their lives, because they're battled with mental health, with PTSD, with depression, you know? But I don't think enough people really appreciate that on any sort of a real level. So, we need to come, and again, it's not just people's fault. I look at the medical profession in general. MDs are not trained enough in mental health to really do the job. Even psychiatrists aren't trained enough in the psychology, but their sole job is to prescribe for the psychology. And no offense to psychiatrists, I think the psychiatrist is an unneeded middleman. I think psychologists should just be able to prescribe. You get them out of the way. You treat them as the doctors they are. So, again, I'm going off on a tangent here, but let me bring it back. It's not just Andrew Luck that struggles with this. And yes, the reaction from the fans in Lucas Oil Stadium that booed when it was reported that he was retiring is just absurd. I can understand that you're upset or you don't like it, but a guy that's been the pillar of your franchise, that has been great to this fan base, has to do something to save his life and potentially his future. And, it doesn't jive with the idea of what you want to see in a game. It's a game. It is a game. At the end of the day, it's a game. People play for fun. They get paid to do it and entertain, If Siegfried and Roy decided that they weren't going to stick their heads in a tiger's mouth anymore after being bit by the tiger, which I think all of us were like, oh shit, I think that might come one day, and it did. Would you blame them if they decided not to do that anymore? or they weren't going to do their act anymore? No. Because he got his head bit by a tiger. Nobody's blaming him for that. Nobody should blame the tiger. You know? I don't know why people get upset at animals do animal things. You know? So if Siegfried and Roy decided no more tigers or lions or animals, none of that anymore, I mean, I don't think that's what people were going to the show strictly for anyways. But nonetheless, Andrew Luck is clearly within his rights to do this. We saw Borland a couple years ago, who a rookie linebacker from Wisconsin for the 49ers, was phenomenal in his rookie year. Decided to retire, call it quits. Gave the money back. Because he's had concussions, and he doesn't want to have more concussions. Totally respect that. Some people can't understand. Sometimes what one person sees as a reward, others don't. Like, I have a friend of this show. He's actually contributed too. He moved from Texas to Alaska. Alaska will pay you to live there. Like, the guy he's going to make 6 figures doing the same job he did in Texas and Alaska. Like, they added $40,000 on to his annual pay. Plus housing. Plus the state pays him money for being there. But I'm telling you, for 6 figures, you know, 120,000, 150,000, no way you're going to get me to live in Alaska. And that's not saying there's something wrong with Alaska. You know, that's just not my cup of tea. I don't like the cold. I don't like dealing with the cold. I don't like ice that's on the ground. I don't ice skate. I'm not into it. I was when I was a kid, but when I became an adult and I had to deal with getting to work, dealing with how did the snow plow my driveway or vehicle in now? Why? And now I got to scoop out when you got to take an hour and a half out of your day to prepare just getting into your car and getting to your job, when you got to add a half hour, 45 minutes to your commute just simply because you have to drive slower, that sucks. That's too much of an inconvenience for me in my life. I would rather spend that 45 minutes sleeping, which I don't do enough of as it is. As you could tell, it's a show that goes from 9 to midnight. So, and I'll be back up at 5 a.m., 5:30. So, you know, living in Florida works for me more because I don't have to deal with the weather in that aspects. Now, on the other hand, we have rain. We have hurricanes, you know, which this weekend we're supposed to get some rain from a tropical storm or hurricane. I'm telling you right now, as I sit here, I've seen all the spaghetti models. I'm not boarding up any windows. I'm not worried about impending storm. It's not a worry for me. But most people hear a hurricane coming. Oh no, you got a hurricane coming. I'm not worried about it. As of right now, I have zero worries. Actually, like I said earlier in the show, we have a birthday party this weekend. Not changing any of those plans. As of right now, the weather report said we have a 40% chance of rain where I live, right? Scattered thunderstorms. So, a little fact when you're looking at weather that I learned, it's an interesting fact. When you see 40% chance of rain, that means 40% of the area they're talking about will get rain. So it's not that you have a 40% chance you will or won't get rain. It's saying out of the area it's talking about, so a city. So if you're saying Tampa has a 40% chance of rain, what they're saying is 40% of Tampa will get rain. 60% likely won't. Obviously, if your area is smaller, then that 40% is a larger impact on you than if you live in a larger area. Now, if the high temperature also says 92, what you've learned in Florida is there's really two weathers. Hot, or rainy. It's rarely cold here. There's a couple months out of the year it'll get chilly. It'll get cold. But you don't have ice, you don't have snow. So it's not a huge bother. People seem to be afraid of rain. I've never understood that. I mean, we own umbrellas, but a lot of people I see running around with umbrellas. It's like, what's the big thing with umbrellas? I don't use an umbrella. I just run to my car, get in, and I'm good. I don't think I get any more wet. I'll hold the umbrella for my wife, close it, give it to her, and then I'll get in the other side. I don't know. I'm not made out of sugar. I don't melt. It's the same kind of water you drink and take a shower with. I don't know. I'm not out in the rain enough, I guess, to need the umbrella. Maybe if it was a long distance and I was going somewhere important that I didn't want to be soaking wet, I would use it. I don't know. It's just, that's the thing, is I'm never in a situation where I need to be in the rain for a prolonged period of time to be shielded from the rain. I usually try to get from one place that's not getting rain to another place that is not getting rain pretty quickly. Anyways. Andrew Luck, I think it was the best decision for Andrew Luck. Him deciding to retire was actually the best thing he could do for the Colts. Because continue to hang around and linger around and be the shadow, unhappy, not mentally in a place to perform, puts him and others at a greater risk. How that money still affects the cap, it still affects it the same way if he's there. So them letting him keep the money, unless they decide to find a way to give him the money and release him, which they could do in arbitration, it would still be that cap hit. So we'll see what they do there moving forward. But I look forward. Jacoby Brissett is a quality backup. I look forward to him looking better than he did last year, and because of the division they're in and their schedule, there's a potential maybe they are a wild card team with him. So I know they've put some good pieces around there as far as skill players. The defense has improved.
And so is the offensive line. But that's the big thing, is that offensive line. They waited too long, in my opinion, to really start building around. Like the year that they got him, they focused on weapons for him. And then the second year, they drafted a guy at offensive line, and then they didn't really pay from year 3 on. Really didn't put enough emphasis on building up that line. It was hey, we don't have a running back for him to take the pressure off him. Well, you could have a good offensive line. And then how good your running back is won't matter as much, because you can just do running back by committee if you have a strong offensive line. This is the whole reason the Cowboys have had multiple 1,000-yard rushers, multiple guys that have been top rushers in the league, and then they let guys walk because we got the offensive line that helps the guys do that thing. So, no, I'm not getting into the Cowboys. I see a couple messages coming across here now. It's too late in the show for that. So I might get into it a little bit later on this week. But we did launch, by the way, the Cold Hard Truth on college football, the CHT on CFB. So find that on social media as well. So we're going to have strictly college football content over there. And there was a demand for it. So we've created that option now for people to find us out on social media and the website, thechtonsports.com. Kevin has his content up there. Like I told you from earlier this week, his predictions and stuff will be up there on Thursday, and we'll be sure to share that out on social media as well too. So, but that's going to do it for us this week. So be sure to tune in next week, same time, from 9 to midnight on Blog Talk Radio and the Spreaker app. Spreaker literally is the best place to listen to the show. Definitely download the Spreaker app for free. Listen to us over there. Thank you all for listening to us. If you listen to us on the podcast, on SoundCloud or YouTube or the website, we very much appreciate it. So that's all for this week, and I am out.
Welcome to the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. I apologize in advance if I am out of line here.
Great shows, boys. Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.